So in this demo, I'm going to be looking at the NTAD POE Part A or Part 1. So the requirements that it says here is, firstly, I need to ensure that Activity 1, planning and deployment of the installation of the server infrastructure. At this stage, install the server for the head office, keeping in mind that the domain administrative tasks will be centralized and dealt with at the head office. Promote the server to a domain controller. That means install Active Directory. So I would have gone into then configure automated server installation that will be used for server deployment for each mobile lab. Automated server installation that will be used for each mobile lab. Okay, so they're going to give us a number of different labs. So there's multiple servers that needs to be installed. But for this part 1, it says just install the first server. If I go now into my virtual lab, and I'm going to open up my server that I've installed. So I'm going to log on to my server. My domain is called College Suben. So yours would be whatever college, your name. Okay, so remember we said you needed to use proper naming conventions. So this is a college because we know that they have head office with multiple labs, then they have a remote branch office as well. So I've installed my server, and then I've promoted my server to Active Directory. This you all should be familiar with. You've done this previously. So install Active Directory. Then what does it say next? So promote the server to a domain controller. Configured and automated server installation that will be used for deployment. Automated server installation, we have said that that one is which one? WDS. So if I go into my notes, which is my textbook, I will see that in chapter 2, they speak about WDS, performing an installation over a network using WDS. Now, they don't give you the exact configuration on how to install WDS and set up WDS. They give us a basic understanding here of the client connecting to the WDS server and then performing an installation from the WDS server. Here, you have to set up the WDS server. So you need to go and do some additional research. So if I go and if I just say, let me open up a search and I say install WDS server 2016, and if I search for it, okay, step by step how to Windows deployment in server 2016. So there's an article there, installing and configuring WDX PXE, set up WDS server. This was from Tech Guides. So how to set up Windows deployment services in server 2016. And then they go through an article that shows me the installation options, transport server, deployment server. I'm using it as a deployment server. This option provides the full functionality of WDS to configure and remotely install Windows operating systems. Server deployment is dependent on the core parts of the transport server. You can install WDS server role via Server Manager or using Windows PowerShell. We're going to use Server Manager. And then there's the requirements. A deployment server requires DNS and DHCP servers on the network. So what do I need to go and do first? Go and install my DNS and go and install my DHCP. Both deployment and transport server requires NTFS partition for the file store. That's done automatically when I install the server. After installation, you must configure WDS either using wdsutil.exe or running the Windows Deployment Server configuration wizard. So I need to go through a wizard afterwards. You must add at least one boot image and one install image to the image store. Okay, so they give you step-by-step instructions now on how to go ahead and install and set up WDS server. Can you see? A simple search gave me step-by-step instructions on what to do. So it's already there. You do not need me to do a demo of things that is already there. Okay? You need to acquire the skills about how to do this independent research to understand what is required and then to complete the activity. So if I go into my server now, they said I first need to go and install DHCP and DNS. DNS is automatically installed for me when I install Active Directory. Remember, one of the requirements to install Active Directory is that I need to have DNS installed. If there's no DNS there, it means that Active Directory cannot find computers, cannot find objects. So it depends on DNS to locate objects in Active Directory or on the network or other computers. If I go to tools here, I should see that I've got a DNS console here. Can you see? DNS is already installed because when I installed Active Directory, it went and installed DNS for me as well. And then it automatically created all of these records for me in DNS. We're going to come back to that just now. So you know now how to go ahead and install WDS. There's instructions here. We came across a website. There's the website, ittechguides.com, set up WDS server in 2016. So that you need to do, figure out. The instructions are all there. Going back to what is required of me now, I look at my, okay, configure automated server deployment that will be used. That's installation of WDS. Configure a server deployment infrastructure taking into consideration forest and domains that could be involved. There's only one domain, one forest. Now, looking at the marking rubric, head office, deployment installed of the server head office to meet all network requirements. I've installed Active Directory. I need to go back to the case study and then say, what is the network requirements? This is the head office server. It must be a read-write copy of Active Directory. Okay. And then anything else that I come across from the case study, I should include. So what would be a screenshot that would show me that I've installed Active Directory, the head office, and then met all of the network requirements? I would have needed to have gone back and looked at the head office. What does it have in it? So some configuration needs to be done. This is the branch office. I don't have to worry about that for now. There's the department LAN, multimedia lab, training lab, research lab, server room, and 3 offices. So I need to go into my Active Directory. There's my Active Directory users and computers. And I need to ensure that I have all of those labs that needs to be set up. So this is DNS. I'm going to come back to DNS. What happened? Did I close it? Okay, let's connect to it again. So I wanted to close it here. I'm just going to maximize the screen there. And I can see that actually it looks bigger if I do it in this view. Okay, that's clearer. So what am I looking for? Tools, Active Directory users and computers. And then I've got college that has been set up here. That's my domain, collegesubain.com. And then in the domain, I'm then going to create these organizational units. What are they? Training lab. So College Subain CS Train Lab. I'm going to create an OU for College Subain Train Lab. Can you see the naming convention as well that I'm using? And then I'm going to say, okay. So I've created a organizational unit here. What else did it ask me for? Training lab, research lab, multimedia lab. Multimedia, so I'm going to create all of these. Multimedia research server room. So I click on the domain and then I click on organizational unit and I want to create. So which one have I created? Training. So CS marketing. And I can even say OU. Click on the domain again, organizational unit. Research, College Subain Research. OU. Okay, so you might want to include now also this is the head office and then you've got a branch office, remote office. So maybe for the head office, you don't need to say head office, or you could say head office, OU as well. But for the remote office, you should also include that you're going to do in the next assignment. For this assignment, you just need to create the basics for the head office. So when they're talking about network requirements, they are saying that you have set up your Active Directory, you've configured your organizational units at least, right? So that's the infrastructure that you are creating. You could also indicate that you have set an IP address because you need to have set an IP address as well. So let me go back and look at my marking rubric now. So my marking rubric says for the 4 marks, I need to indicate that I've taken a screenshot of Active Directory users and computers to show that the head office server has been installed. So I could also say HO, CSHO, marketing OU. Can you see that would be a better name? Okay, so in my names, I've not included HO for head office. You can include that in your names. Then the next one says installed server at the head office is promoted to the first domain controller. So that's the picture of Active Directory that you need to include. This one here, you need to say that you've installed the server and what post server installation tasks have you done. In other words, if I go in and if I look at the server here, in the server, I can go to the server's properties to show that the server has been installed. So I can take a picture of this one here. Server 2016 has been installed. You can change the computer name Mine is not changed. You must go and change it to a proper computer name that indicates that this one is your head office, College Suben DC1, for example. Okay, so I've not changed mine, but I'm going to indicate that a computer name. Now, can you see you need to do all of this before you promote your server to a domain controller. Otherwise, you'll need to be aware that these changes have certain effects. Okay, so there's the computer name. Proper name would be like College Suben head office DC1. So I know that this is my domain controller 1. So make sure that you have done those installation tasks. So I'm not going to do that because it's going to take time to reboot the server, etc. So those are the installation tasks that you would need to take for the first one here, network requirements. That's the computer name, IP address, any other changes that you make. Then the second one here, this one here, you take a picture of Active Directory. This one here, forest and domain functional levels. You can go into Active Directory. Now from users and computers, here, for example, if I go to my, it gives me the option to raise domain functional level here. And then it's got an option for operation masters as well. Okay, but they didn't ask about operation masters. They asked about raising the domain functional level. So I can see here that the current domain functional level is Windows Server 2016. I can take a screenshot of this one. The forest functional level will be found in Active Directory sites and services. So if I go to tools and if I look at Active Directory sites and service domains and trusts, or is it sites and services? Let's just see. Domains and trust, raise domain functional level. Properties. Okay, so if I went to the properties, I can see the domain functional level is Windows Server 2016 and the forest functional level is Windows Server 2016. So you can take a screenshot of this one, and this indicates the current domain and forest functional levels. Can you see? And then you would say, why is it set to this particular server functional level, forest or domain functional level, according to the case study? So there's the screenshot that you would take. So you can get to this from Active Directory Trust and Services. You can also get to it from the other tools. So you've also got sites and services as well. So in sites and services, is it opening it? There's it here. It's already open. So sites and services. Can you see if I click on sites and services, it allows me to change forest, change domain. But I've already shown you which is the screenshot that you need to take for domains from domains and trusts. What is the other screenshots that you need to take? Automated server installation. So here you would have set up WDS. But before you set up WDS and take the relevant screenshots, according to that article that I showed you on the website, okay, that is going to give you your 4 marks for this one here. Forest and domain considerations. The server infrastructure is outstandingly customized and well configured to cater for current and future forest and specific needs to the network. So server infrastructure. So server infrastructure refers to how many domain controllers are you going to install. They already said in each of the labs we need a server. That's why you needed automated server deployment. So I need a server in the training lab, in the research lab, in the marketing lab, and then in the service room. How many servers am I going to have? How many domain controllers should I have? By default, at least 2 domain controllers in the head office for fault tolerance and load balancing. Okay, and then in addition to that, they said in each of the labs you also need to have servers, but do those servers have to be domain controllers? Maybe, maybe not. You need to answer it according to the case study. So not necessarily those can be member servers. In other words, they are joined to the domain, but they don't have Active Directory installed. Okay, then so that one is going to take care of now the server infrastructure. So you're going to show how many servers. See, in Active Directory, if I go in here, and where's my Active Directory? This is domains and trusts. I don't want that one. This is Active Directory sites and services. There's my Active Directory users and computers. Inside of each of these labs, I can go and say I want a new. Now here, okay, I've got domain controllers OU here. Does it allow me to provision new computer? So I can set up these computers that are formed inside here. So I've already got this DC1. I can set up a new computer here, and I can say this is College Subban DC2. No, head office, and then DC2. I've already got DC1, DC2. And then I can, okay. For now, you don't have to worry about those settings. You just need to create the different servers that you need. So in the training lab, I'm going to then set up multiple servers here. So I'm going to say new computer, and then this is going to be, this is CS training lab. So CS head office training lab server I'm only going to have one server there, so I'm just going to say that that's the server. And I'll say, okay. I can do that for the same, for the other labs as well. Okay. So now, this is now setting up your server and your domain infrastructure. So you can set it up like that. You can also, it allows us also to provision servers. If I go to Active Directory sites and services. If I go into Active Directory sites and services, now here you're going to create two sites. Okay, so this default first site name, you can rename that to, this is College Subain head office. So maybe I want to give it a better name. So I'm going to say College Subain and then head office. So I know that this site is my head office site. So here you can see under the servers, you can create additional servers here. So new server, and then this is going to be the, what server is it? College Subain head office DC2. So there's my servers under head office. So you'll need to configure these as well. Now it's got subnets in the site. You can create subnets for each of the okay. For now, we don't need to do that, but I'm just showing you for future. Let's go back to what is required and the MARC allocation. Okay, so I'm done with the first part. That's activity 1. Head office server, taking screenshots for each of these Active Directory users and computers, Active Directory domains and trusts. You can take the picture from there. The one picture is for both of these. Explain. WDS, you need to install WDS. We showed you an article on how to install WDS. And then forest and domain considerations, the server infrastructure. How many servers are you going to have? Where are you going to install those servers? You take the relevant screenshot. The next one, activity 2, says DHCP is installed and adequately configured to take into consideration the entire infrastructure of the forest. So I go into my into my server, and then I go to Server Manager. And I'm going to now install add roles and features. And I install my DHCP. So under tools, I should have DHCP now. And then I need to go ahead and configure my DHCP. It says, before a DHCP server can issue IP addresses, you must create a scope and authorize the server in DHCP, authorize the DHCP server. I'm going to create multiple scopes now for my head office. So again, it's Khalid Subain, head office training. And I'm going to give it 192.168. So it's private IP addresses. And I can choose the first one as being 10.0 until 192.168, 10. So not 0, the start IP address. So it must give out IP addresses from 10 and it must go up to 200. Okay, so from 10 to 200, and that's the first subnet. Exclusions, you can add exclusions if necessary. So I'm going to exclude the first 9, 192.168, 10 from .1. So I said it must go from 10. Okay, so I'm going to exclude 10, 192.168, 10 dot. First 5 I'm going to exclude for 15, from 10 to 15. I'm going to accept the default. You want to configure the scope options now. Default gateway is going to be the server. So it's 192.168.10.1. That's my server. Khalid Subain, what is this now? Okay, so it's already got the server there, so I don't need to add additional servers here. Do you want to activate the scope? Yes. And then finish. And then I need to authorize the server. So I'm going to right click on the server and I'm going to say authorize. So authorize the DHCP server. Right, so it's been authorized. So I can see there's my first scope that has been set up. Similarly, I'm going to set up scopes for each of the other labs as well. So this is training lab, marketing lab, or research. So I can create another scope here. And this one is going to be Khalid Subain, Head Office Research. This is Research Lab. and I'm going to make it 192.168. Instead of 10, I'm now going to say 20.1, going up to 192.168, 20.200. So there's 200 computers here, and I'm going to exclude the first 5. 192.168, 20.1, 192.168, 20.2. 5. I said the first 5 I'm going to exclude. And then I'm just going to accept all of the rest of the default gateway is the server 192.168, 10.1. That's the server. So as you can see, I'm setting up scopes now for each of the different labs that I have. In other words, IP addresses for each of the labs. The scope is telling me which IP addresses is going to be used per lab. Now let's look at the activity and what's in the marking rubric. DHCP installation and configuration. The DHCP service is adequately configured, taking into consideration the entire network infrastructure of the forest. That's what they mean. Have you set up IP addresses or scopes for all your training labs in the head office and then also for the remote office as well? Because they say the entire forest. So you need to have IP addresses configured for both the head office and then for the remote office. DHCP management. The DHCP management solution is adequately configured, taking into consideration the entire network infrastructure of the forest. And then overall configuration. The configuration of the above is functional and outstandingly meets the expectations of the scenario and the needs of the network. This includes DHCP database, options, addressing, filtering, etc. So what are all of the screenshots that needs to be taken here? So firstly, I can see in the now here, let me go back to my theory and let's see what they have to say. If I go to my textbook and I'm looking for post-installation tasks, they are talking about drivers, etc. No, not that one. Active Directory. This is directory services, understanding DNS. So if there's more information that I want on DNS and configuration, I can go and look at chapter 4. Adding roles. They speak about server roles, application server, web server, remote access, and file and print servers, group policy, etc. Where is DHCP? It may be under these roles. Let me just search quickly for DHCP. under application servers. So they've got application servers. Add the DHCP role using DHCP. So this is under installing. So they show us how to do it using the command prompt. Okay, so there's information here. So as you can see from this diagram, for example, they've got green ticks here, and they've got the address pool that has been configured. They've got server options, policies, etc. So what's required here is for me to go and to configure my DHCP, configuring the scopes, the address pool, scope options. All of these is what's required to say that you have configured DHCP. So server options, nothing is configured here. Policies, filters. So in other words, you need to now go and look at DHCP. What needs, how to configure server options? What needs to be done here? Policies, set a policy, filters. This one was the last section. So if I look at the there's it here. So DHCP database options, addressing, filtering, etc. So the configuration above is not functional and does not meet. So it needs to include DHCP database options, addressing, and filtering, overall configuration. So you need to show for 5 marks, what have you configured? What database options have you configured? What addressing options have you configured? What filtering options have you configured? This one here, DHCP management solution. DHCP management solution is adequately configured, taking into consideration the network infrastructure. So in terms of DHCP management configuration, what does that mean? So I'm going to go and search and find out. DHCP management. So I'm looking for DHCP management server 2016. What to configure? It shows me how to install the role. There's videos here that show you how to set up your DHCP. There's a Microsoft article. How to configure scopes, etc. So you can look at one of these resources to then say, what have you done to configure DHCP management? In other words, look at I've authorized the server, okay? Then backup, restore, properties of the server. There's the database. That's where it's stored. You can back up and restore the database. IP version 4. What can I do here? all the scopes, configure failover scopes, define, reconcile, predefined properties of the IP version 4, enable auditing, DNS, filters, failover, advanced. So have you set any of these additional options, and why have you set it or not set it? Okay, so look at these different options that can be configured on your DNS server, sorry, your DHCP server, and look at the management of DHCP. What do I need to manage here? I've set up my scope. Is the scope working? Is it allowed to? It's activated. There's the properties. Is there anything else that I need to configure here? And that is now DHCP. So going back now, okay, so those are the screenshots that I would take in my DHCP to configure or to show that DHCP has been configured correctly. The last one speaks about DNS installation and configuration. DNS is outstandingly configured for the entire network infrastructure. Here as well, so interoperability, replication, and zone configuration. So that's the things that they want us to look at here. So where would I find this on the server? I would open up my server manager. I would go to Tools, DNS. Inside DNS, I will find right. So here you can see that I've got Khalid Subain, and then under forward lookup zones, it's automatically created. It's automatically created these forward lookup zones here. So that's a forward lookup zone that has been created. You've got reverse lookup zone, nothing has been created there. On the server, they spoke about forwarding advanced routines. Okay, is there anything that needs to be configured on the server? And then on the zone itself, if I go to the zones properties, they speak about zone transfers. So there's allow zone transfers. They spoke about replication. So zone transfers, you set it up on the zone itself. So I'm going to say allow zone transfers, then you'll specify, is it allowed to any servers, a specific server? So they spoke about zone transfers. What else do they speak about? Replication. Dynamic updates is enabled. So on the zone itself, so DNS is a database of name records. So there's a wizard that you can go through that will assist you in creating both the forward and the reverse lookup zones. And then you can, what options needs to be configured here? So let's see the mark allocation again. So they're giving us 4 marks for DNS that's configured correctly for the entire forest infrastructure. That means the zone information. So you need to check that you have adequately created zones. Now that one was automatically created. You'll need to create one for the remote branch office. Then it says DNS interoperability. So does it work with other DNS servers? DNS replication, we showed you on, no, we showed you zone configuration, right? So replication now is copying the DNS database between different servers. And then DNS interoperability, does it work with other DNS servers? So if we go back and we have a look here, what do they have to say about DNS? There's DNS here. Understanding adding DNS. So you'll also do some additional research on DNS installation and configuration. But basically, you would go into the server, and then you would configure these options that you have here. So it's either this, there's the default DNS zone that has been created. On the zone, you can go to its properties. And you can see here, this is now allowing updates. Replication, there's the replication that they were talking about. So you can say, is it allowed to all, or is it, you can take a picture of this zone replication and say, why is it configured like this? So there's zone replication. What else do they want? This is a primary zone. They spoke about zone transfers to any server. In other words, this is replication, security, wins, and general. So look at these configuration options that needs to be configured here. Is there some other questions that I have not covered? So now you've got more detailed explanation of the marking rubric, and you've got a demo about where to go in the operating system to take screenshots, and then an indication of what are some of the screenshots that you would take. So you would go and you would check against the marking rubric, check against the case study, and then take adequate screenshots so that you get the relevant marks according to the marking rubric. It needs to be customized according to the case study. Got it?